Some of you are being destroyed by your own kindness. I didn't say love is wrong. I didn't say compassion is weakness. But hear me, there's a difference between being loving and being accessible to everyone. Lions are not hated for being fierce. They're respected because they don't play with sheep. Too many of you are bleeding emotionally, mentally, spiritually, not because the devil attacked you, but because you let the wrong people too close. Question, who gave them that access? The answer, you did. Some of you have confused kindness with access, and that confusion is costing you your peace, your clarity, your focus, even your calling. Let me say this with authority. Access is not love. Access is not grace. Access is sacred, and not everyone deserves it. You don't give the same key to the vault that you give to the front porch, but many of you are handing out the master key to your inner world like it's a party favor. And then you're surprised when they walk in, rearrange your furniture, eat your bread, criticize your paintings, and leave mud on the carpet. You invited them. You gave them the key. You called it love, but it was naivety. See, there is a difference between being kind and being careless. God never called you to be reckless with your heart. You are allowing people to sit in seats they never earned, and now your life is disorganized because your relational architecture is broken. There are people in your inner circle who were only meant to stand at the gate. Let's go deeper. Even heaven has boundaries. Angels don't just wander into the Holy of Holies uninvited. Protocols are enforced, and honor is the currency of access. You think you're being humble by letting everyone close, but heaven calls that foolishness. You are exposing your spirit to atmospheres that do not belong in your destiny. You cannot keep living with your gates wide open and expect to walk in power. Power is preserved through protection. Even Jesus, the greatest giver in all of history, did not give his full self to everyone. Some only got the miracle. Others got the message. A few got the mentorship. And only one leaned on his chest. He calibrated his access based on capacity. Not everyone could handle him, and he knew it. Let me bring it closer to home. A young woman came to me once, devastated. She said, I don't understand. I was just trying to be a good friend. She had let people into her home, into her confidence, into her plans, people who smiled at her face but whispered her name with venom when she left the room. And I asked her one question. Did they qualify for the level of access you gave them? She went silent. See, love is free, but access must be qualified. It must be tested, it must be examined, and it must be limited. You don't give people backstage passes to a life they didn't help you build. Some of you are drained because you're emotionally subsidizing people who were never supposed to be on your payroll, giving time, energy, loyalty, and vulnerability to people who haven't even proven they can handle the weight of your presence. You are not cold for setting boundaries. You are not arrogant for guarding your space. You are not selfish for saying, I love you, but you cannot sit here. Let me speak to your soul. Your presence is expensive. Your spirit is rare. Your mind is oil. And your silence is strategy. Stop explaining your distance to people who never earned your nearness. If heaven protects its throne with angels and fire, why are you handing your heart to anyone who asks? It's time to lock some doors. It's time to reclaim your peace. And it's time to remember this one truth. You are not a hallway. You are a temple. Treat yourself like it. Too much availability breeds contempt. There is a law in human nature. When something is always present, always easy to reach, always saying yes, it begins to lose its weight. and eventually it loses its value. Some of you are not being disrespected because you're unworthy. You're being disrespected because you're too available. You've made yourself common. You become like background noise, always there, always listening, always giving. And now the very people you support have stopped seeing your worth. Not because you changed, but because you refuse to protect your presence. Listen carefully. Kings don't take meetings with everyone. Royalty is not arrogant. It is disciplined. Their absence is part of their power. And your constant presence is draining your influence. You think you're being helpful. You think you're being kind. But what you're really doing is training people to take you for granted. Ask yourself, who have I allowed to become too familiar with me? You see, familiarity is dangerous. Familiarity dulls perception. When people see you all the time, they stop listening to your words. When they always have your time, they no longer treasure your input. Even Jesus, when he went back to his hometown, wasn't received. Why? Because they were too familiar. Isn't this the carpenter's son? They said, not the Messiah, not the anointed one, just Mary's boy. Too common to be holy, too near to be honored. And what happened? He could do no mighty works there. Not because he had no power, but because they had no honor. Now let me ask you, what miracles are being blocked in your life? Not by the enemy, but by people who have become too used to you. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He was a business strategist, brilliant, sharp, always solving other people's problems. People would call him day and night. Just 5 minutes, they'd say, I need your thoughts. He would give and give for free. They praised him at first, thanked him, clapped, but over time their tone shifted. Now they expected his wisdom, demanded his time, and even criticized him when he said no. Why? Because he made himself common property. Eventually he stopped. He pulled back. He created access points and charged what he was worth. And suddenly, the respect returned, not because he changed his message, but because he changed his availability. Some of you are sowing into people who no longer listen, feeding those who now mock your cooking, bleeding for people who no longer care where you hurt. You think you're being Christ-like, but even Christ withdrew from the crowds. He hid from them. He disappeared from their reach, not because he lacked compassion, but because he understood power requires mystery. You've confused loyalty with overexposure. You've given people all of you, and now they treat you like you're nothing. The more available you are, the less they see. Your constant yes has made you invisible. You must become strategic with your presence. Your time is not infinite. Your words are not cheap. Your wisdom is not to be thrown like breadcrumbs in a marketplace of ungrateful souls. Learn to pull back. Learn to disappear long enough for people to notice your silence. Because sometimes your absence will teach them what your presence never could. And when they ask, where have you been? Smile and say, building value in silence. Empathy without discernment is not ministry, it's a trap. Just let me speak this with clarity. Many of you are not broken because of demonic attacks. You are broken because you keep applying compassion where God is applying correction. You are stepping into battles that God never assigned to you, and while you think you're helping, you are interfering with divine discipline. That's not empathy. That's spiritual ignorance dressed in kindness. There is a difference between a wounded soul and a rebellious one. A wounded soul needs healing. A rebellious one needs consequences. And if you treat a rebellious heart like it's a broken one, you will rescue what God is trying to reform. You are not God. You are not the Savior. You are not the one who carries the hammer and the oil at the same time. That's Christ. Your job is not to fix everyone, but to discern who is sent for your embrace and who is being disciplined by their decisions. Let me give you this straight. Some people are not in pain, they are in process. And every time you step in too early, you interrupt what God is doing. You pull them out of the fire before they learn the lesson. You comfort them in the middle of their confrontation with truth. And now, the very people you love keep returning to the same cycle because you never let them feel the sting of their choices. Let me show you something the Lord showed me. There was a young man I met who kept asking for advice, support, prayer, and I gave it freely. He cried, he repented, he promised change. But every month, the same sin, the same excuses, the same apologies, until one day I asked God, what more should I say to him? And God said, nothing. Let the consequences teach him what your words could not. I wept because it went against my heart, but I obeyed. I pulled back. I stopped texting. I stopped checking in. Not out of cruelty, but out of obedience. Months later, that same young man came back, sober, humbled, changed, not because of my help, but because life had finally cornered him into accountability. You must understand, some lessons don't come through love, they come through pain. Even the prodigal son was not rescued by the father in the pigsty. His transformation began not with a hug, but with hunger. And he came to himself, the scripture says, not because of comfort, because of lack. Because God let life teach him. And what would have happened if someone had sent him money? What if someone had rescued him too soon? He would have stayed lost, just in cleaner clothes. You have to stop placing a pillow where God placed a rock. You're not helping them. You're delaying them. You're not showing mercy. You're weakening their spine. You are loving people into laziness, praying for people who will not obey, and staying up late for people who sleep through their own responsibilities. Ask God before you rescue. Ask him, is this my assignment or is this your judgment? Because you might be comforting someone who is running from conviction, and your help becomes a shield from the very truth they need. Discernment is not suspicion. Discernment is alignment with God's strategy for that person's life. You can weep for them, you can pray for them, but you cannot always protect them from what God has allowed. Because some of the deepest changes happen not in the arms of a friend, but in the silence of consequence. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let the process finish its work. Stop confusing connection with alignment. Some of you are binding yourselves to people simply because you relate to them. You grew up together. You went through the same struggle. You both got rejected. You both were broken. So now you say, this person gets me. This person understands me. But here's the problem. They're walking in a different direction. Alignment is not about emotional closeness. It is about spiritual direction. Two people can cry over the same pain and still end up in two different futures. One learns from it, the other repeats it. One heals, the other rehearses the hurt. One is moving toward destiny, the other is addicted to sympathy. And here you are, connected by shared history, but divided by vision. Let me tell you something that will save your destiny. Shared trauma is not the foundation for divine alignment. You're not supposed to walk with everyone who understands your past. You are called to walk with people who are committed to your future. God doesn't join people based on similarity. He joins them based on assignment. Mary and Elizabeth were both pregnant, but different generations, different callings. Yet their spirits leapt at each other because they were divinely aligned for a moment of exchange, not a lifelong friendship. Some of you are dragging people into seasons that they were never graced to survive. You're trying to upgrade relationships that were only meant to be temporary, and now you're exhausted because you're dragging dead weight and calling it loyalty. Loyalty is not staying connected to who you've outgrown. Loyalty is staying faithful to where God is calling you, even if it means walking alone for a while. I've seen this destroy people. A gifted woman, powerful, anointed, hungry for more, but she kept circling the same 3 friends because they once prayed together in college. But while her spirit had evolved, they remained the same. Bitter, offended, critical of growth. And she stayed loyal to them and stagnant with them. Till the Lord asked her one question: is this friendship feeding your faith or fighting it? When God wants to multiply you, He subtracts who cannot handle your next. You've got to stop being sentimental about connections that cost you clarity. Walk with those who push you forward, not those who pull you backward, in the name of being real. Is where God is taking you. Alignment is not optional, it is survival. Some of you are exhausted, not because you lack strength, but because you lack filters. You're tired because you keep allowing people into your life who should have never been there in the first place. You open your spirit to every voice, every opinion, every need, every cry. And now, your mind is cluttered, your peace is leaking, and your identity is drowning under the weight of too many unqualified influences. God did not design you to carry everyone. Jesus fed thousands, but He only walked closely with 12, and out of those, only 3 saw His most intimate moments. He loved the world, yes, but He didn't live with the world. He ministered to the crowd, but He rested with the few. You are trying to rest with the crowd and wondering why you have no clarity. It's not a mystery. It's a lack of divine boundary. Let me speak plainly. Not everyone who approaches you deserves your time. Just because they need you doesn't mean they were sent by God. Some people don't want healing, they want your strength to avoid their own process. And every time you pick up what God told them to carry, you weaken them and drain yourself. There was a woman, brilliant, full of potential, always serving. She said yes to everything. I just want to help, she said, but her smile began to fade. Her body grew tired. Her faith started to dim. Not because she wasn't anointed, but because she was overcommitted. Every call she answered, every event she attended, every crisis she carried, until God whispered, I didn't assign all of this to you. God doesn't reward busyness, He rewards obedience. He didn't call you to be everyone's answer. He called you to be faithful to your assignment. And when you blur the lines between compassion and codependency, you will always end up bitter, burnt out, and broken. You must learn to say no, not because you don't care, but because you've been called. And what you've been called to do requires emotional discipline. You can't pour into everyone and expect to have something left for your own growth. Stop apologizing for your boundaries. Stop explaining your silence. Stop feeling guilty for protecting what God gave you to steward. Your energy is not infinite. Your grace has an assignment. And your life is too valuable to be spent trying to save people who won't even swim. Sometimes the most powerful word you can speak in a season is not a prophecy, it's a no. Guard your gates. Preserve your well. Heaven cannot flow through an overwhelmed vessel. There is a price for peace, and sometimes that price is distance. You cannot keep nurturing chaos and expect calm to reign in your soul. You cannot keep walking with disorder and expect direction to emerge. There comes a time in your journey when you must choose. Do I want to be liked or do I want to be aligned? Because you will not have both. Too many people are sacrificing their peace on the altar of people-pleasing. You are living in emotional torment, not because you're under attack, but because you refuse to disconnect from what's killing your clarity. You are staying too long in conversations God already walked away from. You are entertaining relationships that expired 2 seasons ago, and now you're wondering why you feel confused, why you can't hear from God like before. And let me say this with fire in my bones. Peace is not passive, it is warfare. And the battleground is often your own decisions. Some of you have built your life around people who benefit from your dysfunction. As long as you're broken, they feel strong. As long as you're confused, they feel needed. But the moment you start healing, the moment you start growing, they become uncomfortable. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because your transformation exposes their stagnation. There was a man I once mentored, gifted, focused, full of drive, but he was surrounded by friends who mocked his discipline. They called him too serious. They told him to loosen up, to stop dreaming so big, to just relax and live like them. And for a while he listened. He dimmed his light to keep their comfort, but the cost was too high. Depression crept in. Frustration began to rise until one day he said something I'll never forget. I realized I was shrinking my destiny just to fit inside their insecurity. That's the moment he chose distance. Not bitterness, not hatred, just distance. And with distance came vision. With distance came peace. With distance came acceleration. Peace is the environment of progress. The enemy doesn't always come with horns. Sometimes he comes as distraction, as guilt, as obligation, as comfort that's no longer your calling. When God is calling you higher, He will require separation. Not because you're better than them, but because the weight you're called to carry demands a different environment. You cannot soar with anchors tied to your ankles. So don't feel guilty for letting go. Don't apologize for growing. Don't explain why you had to step back. Your future is not up for debate. Protect your peace like it's oxygen, because in this next season, only those who guard their atmosphere will be able to carry the glory. So I say to you now, stop being too friendly. Stop giving access to what's sacred. Stop apologizing for your growth. Stop handing your strength to those who only drain it. You were not born to be liked. You were born to lead. You were not called to blend in. You were anointed to stand out. This world is loud, distracting, seductive. But you must walk in wisdom. You must choose relationships that reflect your vision, not just your history. Your future demands focus. And in this season, your kindness must be wise, your love must be discerning, and your boundaries must be unshakable. God is not calling you to be everyone's friend. He's calling you to be His representative. And sometimes being His representative means walking away, closing doors, and refusing to play small just to make others comfortable. You don't need the approval of the crowd to fulfill the assignment of heaven. You only need the courage to say, I know who I am. I know what I carry. And I will no longer shrink to fit into places that were never designed for my destiny. So rise up, choose peace over pressure, choose growth over guilt, choose destiny over distraction. And if you must walk alone for a while, then walk alone with heaven backing you. Because the ones who change the world are never the ones who were too afraid to say no. Good luck on your journey to alignment. May your life be marked by clarity, power, and divine boldness. And from the depth of my heart, thank you. Thank you for listening, thank you for growing, and thank you for choosing to become all God has called you to be. God bless you.